Hey everyone, so an idea that I see get bounced around among One Piece fans from time to time is that the Straw Hats may even end up going to the moon at some point in the story. Now, for a long time this seemed like a fairly out there sort of theory where people would kind of acknowledge it as, as a vague possibility. One Piece is, after all, a very fantastical series, a lot of things could happen, but ultimately it does seem kind of strange. However, a little while back I talked about the final remaining islands that the Straw Hats would go to. And when I made that video, I was fairly confident that the moon should be on that list. I didn't talk about it simply because it's in-depth enough to warrant its own video, but at the end of this you'll see how it would fit into what I was talking to initially, because I do think it's extremely possible that either Raftel itself is on the moon, or the Straw Hats may be making some sort of short trip from Raftel to the moon at some point. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more content like this. So let me explain. First, and most simply, is that we already know that the moon was significant in the past. We know this, of course, from NL's cover story, which showed us hieroglyphics of ancient races that seemingly have traveled down to Earth a long while back. Now, I'm not going to go into detailed speculation as to what the hieroglyphics mean. It's not that relevant. Some fun ideas I've seen thrown around is that we actually see all three ancient weapons showcased here. Poseidon, Pluton, and maybe even Uranus, but that is all speculation. No matter what the significance of the hieroglyphics is, the existence of these hieroglyphics alone, of course, does not necessarily mean that the Straw Hats themselves have to go to the moon. We could just as easily learn all about the lore of the One Piece world, where races came from, etc. We could learn all of that at Raftel, assuming Raftel's on the Blue Sea, without actually having to visit the actual origin place. So the moon has important information, but that doesn't necessarily mean we have to physically go there just as a reason by itself. However, this is also One Piece we're talking about. I think the discussion of whether or not the Straw Hats will go to the moon has kind of a simple answer. The simple fact that there is a discussion, the simple fact that the moon is in the realm of possibility, that in itself means we're going to go there. As I see it, this has always been a story that has aimed to take the reader on the most fantastical adventure possible. It is meant to be dreamlike, wilder than our wildest imaginations, a world where even an ocean of clouds in the sky is possible. So far, without fail, anytime Oda has introduced some sort of fantastical location, he has always made sure that the Straw Hats inevitably make their way there. The moment we were told in East Blue that a place like Fishman Island exists, the moment we heard about a city of gold, an ocean in the sky, a land of giants, so on and so forth, it has basically become a guarantee that the reader will get to see this location precisely because this is meant to be the grandest adventure possible. So it's funny to me a little bit that people talk about the moon and we all acknowledge that it's technically possible, as a character has in fact gone there, and yet so many readers still view it as, yeah, it's possible but it feels too out of place, or I can't imagine the Straw Hats actually going to the moon. That stance doesn't make any sense to me, as the fact that it sounds too out there, or too unbelievable, or too bizarre for the crew to realistically go to. That in itself makes it all the more likely that a writer like Oda will definitely take us there. Now, you might say, well, that's a terrible argument, as by that logic, why shouldn't we expect the Straw Hats to travel to other dimensions, or to a different galaxy, or to heaven or hell, or something crazy like that? Well, the difference here is that Oda has already told us it is possible to go to the moon in this series. So just because One Piece is a fantastical, dreamlike series doesn't mean I'm saying that, literally anything goes. The author has still set certain bounds for the way the world works, what the story is. The story takes place on the ocean for the most part, so the Straw Hats suddenly getting a rocket ship and going 50 light years away to some other galaxy would kind of take the reader out of the story. However, the moon, to me, feels like something that Oda has very gently pushed into the realm of possibility through the Skypiea arc. The moon is not an impossible destination in the One Piece world that has been demonstrated to us. It is made out to seem like an impossible destination at first, but it is then shown as a very real possibility. The simple act of making it so NL actually succeeds in going to the moon makes it way more palatable if down the line the Straw Hats themselves end up going to the moon, as that has already been brought into the realm of realism in the reader's mind in a very small, unobtrusive way early on in the story. And what's extra interesting is how the Skypiea arc is framed in general. So the entire storyline begins with discussions of dreams, romance, the idea that anything is possible, and so on. It seems absurd that one could actually travel to the sky and that a sky island would be waiting there, and yet that's exactly what the Straw Hats do. Partway through the arc, an even more fantastic location is brought up. Fairyverse, the moon. And as delusional as NL is, he's a madman, he's actually trying to go to the moon. If the reader has been paying attention, then we should have learned a lesson at this point that anything is possible. And so the Skypiea arc actually concludes with NL succeeding in his insane goal of going beyond the sky to the moon itself. In retrospect, that's such a cool way to frame things, starting the arc with the absurdity of traveling to the sky and realizing it's possible, and concluding the arc with the reader being shown that something even more unimaginable, traveling to the moon, is possible. Now, what's really interesting is something I've mentioned in past videos, but I think is really relevant here. So the only arc in One Piece where the main focus of the crew throughout the arc is actual treasure hunting. Genuine treasure hunting, like genuine pirates, the only arc where that's the case is Skypiea. The storyline starts with us being told about a lost treasure that many don't even believe exists, the lost City of Gold. As it turned out, the City of Gold was hidden away in the sky this entire time. Now, the next arc in the story, with an emphasis on treasure hunting, will of course be the future arc of Raftel. And again, we have a treasure that many don't even believe exists on an island that no one has ever been able to find. Bellamy himself likens the search for the City of Gold to the search for One Piece. People chasing dreams, things that don't exist, etc. In general, I do feel that the entire Skypiea arc was heavy foreshadowing for the eventual Raftel arc, and I definitely do not think that Oda just pulled out the absolute most fantastical location he had in his bag this early in the series for the City of Gold with the Skypiea arc. I don't think he really blew his load with Skypiea if he didn't already have in mind a place that would top even that for the grand finale. Not to mention that the concept of a sky island has become a little more typical and mundane this far in the journey. If the City of Gold was in the sky, I would bet that something to do with One Piece is on the moon. Either Raftel itself is on the moon, or the Straws have to travel directly up from Raftel to the moon, maybe the One Piece is on the moon, or the information about One Piece is on the moon. There's a lot of possibilities, lots of ways we could spin it, but I do think that the final grand treasure hunt the Straws go on will take them in some way to the most fantastical location possible in this series. Not to mention, it kind of just makes sense when you think about Raftel for a moment. So literally, in the last 20 years, no one has been able to find this island. Pirates have been sailing the Grand Line in search of it for decades, and no one has just randomly come across it. Out of everybody who's been searching for the last 20 years, no one has randomly come across it. Now, maybe it has some natural barriers, similar to Wano, but even then, guess what? Characters still stumble upon Wano. Whatever Raftel is, I don't believe it's an island that's just, sitting out there in the ocean, floating in the sea somewhere, and everyone has just missed it over and over. I doubt Oda would have it at the bottom of the sea again, as we've basically been there, done that, and similarly, I don't believe he would just do a sky island again, since that's old news at this point. I think the only way to truly top everything he's done in the story so far would be to go to the moon. Since we know, right, the 4 red poneglyphs are involved, to me, it would make sense if, let's say, if the Straws are supposed to go to the spot marked at the center of the 4 red poneglyphs, at, let's say, a specific point of time in the night to line up with a matching spot on the moon directly above that location. After that, it would just be a straight shot up to that specific location on the moon. However, the Straws managed to figure out how to do that. Now lastly, I want to add in one more soft piece of evidence, a very soft piece of evidence, that whatever they're looking for may be on the moon. Maybe the Golden City parallel isn't enough for some of you, but there is one more thing, a minor thing, my favorite forgotten chapter of the series, chapter 22. Sure, it's not the City of Gold, but there is a treasure chest that Gaimon is trying to get, and he enlists Luffy's help in getting to it. This is very, very early in the series, but I like that we have a micro version of the setup we get later on in Skypiea. It's a Luffy-Nami storyline, just like Skypiea, where they want to get a treasure, just like Skypiea. It sounds like a really, really bare-bones similarity, I understand, but you have to understand that the Straws also don't go treasure hunting that often. When treasure comes their way, it's usually basically only if they stumble upon it after defeating a bad guy, or they're offered it as a reward. But the actual storylines where we are told, there is a treasure, now go get it, those are literally just the Gaimon chapter and Skypiea. And both times, again, are interestingly Luffy-Nami storylines, because Nami's character has always been connected to the concept of treasure from the start of the series. And of course, Gaimon and Luffy discuss One Piece in the same conversation as they discuss Gaimon's elusive treasure. And similarly to the One Piece or the City of Gold, Gaimon doesn't even know if the treasure he is seeking exists or not. And maybe this is a terrible reach, but again, the treasure, it turns out to be up in a very high place, with Luffy being the first person who's actually able to go up there and get it. This may seem like a terribly weak parallel. How does any of this connect to going to the moon? I understand it feels like a bit of a stretch, sure, but soft ideas can build off one another. Gaimon's treasure and the One Piece are brought up. There's a treasure he's been trying to get for 20 years. He doesn't even know if it's there. It's up on a high, far-to-reach place. Only Luffy's able to get up there. Then, later on, the City of Gold is brought up as a mythical treasure similar to the One Piece. It's a treasure that potentially doesn't even exist. It turns out it's up on a high, far-to-reach place, literally in the sky itself, which should be impossible to get to, and Luffy is the first person who's able to get there. Following that trend, I do believe Raftel in the One Piece itself as the most legendary of all treasures, something that everyone has been searching for 20 years, people aren't even sure if it exists. I believe that will turn out to be in the most unbelievable and surreal location possible, very high up, completely out of reach, that only Luffy and the Straw Hats will be able to get to, the moon. It's a small trend, but if you add in the facts that yes, the moon was significant to the story in the past in some way, yes, there is important information there, yes, it is possible to go there, and somehow Raftel has not been found at any point on the Blue Sea in the last 20 years by anyone just randomly sailing around, so where is it? If you add all of those small other factors in, then the moon suddenly becomes all the more likely, and most importantly, just the writer we are dealing with is not the type, I don't believe, to throw out his best location, the most unimaginable, surreal location out so early. You really think Oda does not have something to top everything in the series so far, with Raftel, the most legendary island of legendary islands that he's been hyping up for so long. Just based on the simple assumption that going to the sky has to be topped, that the Straw Hats' adventures didn't just peak with Skypiea, I do think that the final destination of the moon is in the works. So that's all for this video. If you enjoyed, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe, and you can follow me on Patreon for more thoughts on this and all future topics.